All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Deborah Weiss. I'm director of the Workforce Science Project at Northwestern. Thank you so much today for joining our session of Navigating People Analytics Careers with our amazing moderator, Richard Rosenow, One Model's VP of People Analytics Strategy, and a key thought leader in people analytics. Among other things, Richard does an amazing job of keeping an up-to-date list of people analytics job opportunities. I've shared that in the chat. These webinars are kind of an extension of that. They're about open roles, but they also go beyond further, and they talk about how organizations are redefining the people analytics function. So we want you to be part of this conversation. Drop your questions in chat anytime, share your LinkedIn profiles. We have an amazing guest today, Phil Willburn, and I'm going to hand it over to Richard to introduce him.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Deborah, and thank you to the Northwestern Workforce Science Project for keeping this project going. It's been a ton of fun meeting everybody. I have been delighted and excited to chat with Phil today. Phil, you've been an inspiration for me, for others in the field, what you've built, what you've talked about, how you get out there and spread word about the community. I am delighted to be here today interviewing you, especially that you've got some open roles on your team, which I know we're going to get to. But Phil, without going too deep, Phil is the VP of People Analytics at Workday. You may have heard of Workday. They're a Fortune 500. They're an incredible company in the HR tech space, really a great light within our space too for people that are in the kind of HR space. I know you know about Workday, and Phil's got an awesome role over there. So Phil, let's go way back to the beginning though. So you've been in leadership and analytics roles for a number of years now. What drew you into people analytics and what keeps you excited?
Yeah, thanks, Richard, and thanks, Deborah. So, honored to be a part of this project. So it is great to see so many friends jump online as well. I actually ended up in people analytics and at Workday. It was a bit of an accident, right? So I won't go through my whole journey, but I've always been drawn to the intersection between data and people. Started in grad school, carried through each of my careers as a network scientist, as an analytics instructor inside the intelligence community, as a leadership strategist for CCL, and even a startup co-founder. So, but now at Workday, it's a misnomer, and I think, Richard, as you're talking about how the field is evolving, there are more and more portfolio roles for people analytics leaders. So for me at Workday, I now lead people analytics, but also strategic workforce planning, HR strategy consulting team, employee experience teams, including our global site experience, events, and even a culture team. And that is the expanding portfolio, right?
I love that combination, especially we're seeing more and more of that kind of strategy and analytics come together. Was that a natural evolution of the role, or was it something you thought you were going to do someday? How did you end up pulling that in?
Yeah, I think, how did I pull that in? It just evolves naturally. I think data-driven HR organizations that are people-centric and use data to make decisions about the best thing for their people, about the best thing for their business, they realize that data and strategy go hand in hand. And so I think that it fits very well with the role. I don't think it's it was just like a natural extension of the work we were doing, Richard.
Oh yeah, no, that's great to hear. And it's funny, we hear about that a lot, where it's a kind of people analytics leader gets pulled in that direction. It doesn't seem like there's a consulting firm really pushing that, although maybe they should, because there's a lot of really successful people analytics teams that end up owning both. So it's great to hear kind of how you've built the team there. So thinking about your background too, I loved hearing network scientist a couple times, even in the intro there, and stalking your LinkedIn, kind of looking in your background. Would love to hear about that and your time at NASA too. Could you talk about how your experiences kind of growing up in the field have led you to where you are today?
Yeah. So like I said, this was kind of by accident, right? And I love being here, right? You talked about our attendees knowing about Workday. Well, they know about it now. We have 60% of the Fortune 500s. That's awesome. I get to meet all sorts of incredible HR leaders every day, but we didn't start like that. When I joined, we were 6,500 people, $2 billion revenue. Now we're 20,000 people, 9 billion, almost
That's
9 billion.
awesome.
So the growth it's been incredible. for that. And so that's been exciting. That's what keeps me here. As far as, the background, I've had, I would say, let's say 3 different careers. And each one of these careers helped me think about people analytics and the function in a different way. So first one, really foundational, is I actually worked inside the U.S. intelligence community. I actually taught network science and big data analytics when big data was a thing. Richard, I think you remember when that was a thing. And in that context, I learned all sorts of things about complex systems and people data and the interventions that can change those systems. So that was very foundational for me. I did a stint at NASA where I actually helped map out the knowledge networks of the space program, of the capsule space program, because they're doing some transfer to the private sector from the public sector to start that up. And so I did some work there, which was very data driven and fun. I was a startup co-founder. And that taught me a lot about pitching ideas, facing rejection, and keeping going. And I definitely use that in the analytics team. And then the last one, I think it was very foundational for me, was I worked at a leadership think tank called the Center for Creative Leadership. And that helped me and that was all about how do leaders think and how do they make decisions. So that shaped how I communicate about data, not just showing insights, but translating them into stories and talking to them about how that matters to the business. So each one of these were foundational. But this role, Richard, was the first people analytics role I was ever in, and the first HR role I was ever in.
I love hearing that, Phil. And it's funny because like you say accidental, and that's a lot of people find their way to people analytics. But if you were to design a career path to become a people analytics leader, you've got a great one. And it's something I try to pass on to people that are new to the field or maybe trying to break into people analytics. Like, how do I get my first people analytics role? It's like, no, go get a HR role, go get something that's in this space, go get some tangible data experience. And I think that sales is underrated as a core skill within people analytics. Having that kind of like founder, rejection, startup kind of mindset, that might be one of the critical skills in people analytics. And so I love hearing your background there. And I think it's a great way to keep the door very open to a lot of diverse people coming into our field. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for indulging me about digging a little deeper into the network science background.
Sure thing.
But I know everyone's very excited to hear about your team. Everyone would love to hear kind of how you've built it, how it's grown over time. And it'd be great to hear maybe like you said, like you were kind of at that first people analytics role and you've built out this really phenomenal organization since then. Could you walk us through kind of that history of the team kind of and maybe some of the structures you're in today?
Yeah. So when I started, I think like a lot of people starting in people analytics, my boss came to me and said, hey, I think this is a great role for you. I don't know anything about people analytics. You have no budget and you have no headcount, but you got to make an impact. That's literally what she said.
Sure.
Which was fun. It was creative. You can be innovative. You can try new things out. And I think my suggestion to get, when you're starting a team is you got to work on the foundation, but that can't monopolize all your time because you also have to have quick wins along the way to surprise people to give you a reputation and be able to get resources. So you got to do both. But like fast forward to now, I think we have a great full stack team of analysts, product managers, data scientists. And I want to emphasize our philosophy here, Richard, because I think it's slightly different, although I do think it's evolving in the field. And Richard, I've heard you also talk about this as well. At Workday, in my team, we operate from a product-oriented analytics function. So what this means, it's not a service-oriented where we align people analytics consultants to a HR COE or a business line COE. This means 3 specific things. One, we design analytics products based on user personas. So we have a persona-based strategy. We know the personas that we're trying to reach, and we build products to do that. Number 2, we deliver direct-to-consumer insights, which means every employee, every manager, every leader sees data and insights curated by our team every month, every quarter, and sometimes every week, right?
That's huge.
And the third thing is we invest so much time in enablement and education to drive adoption. I think Richard, there's been a little bit of an adoption crisis in people analytics. And I think that's because no data scientist or analyst is really excited about enabling and communicating and training other people. But that's the unlocker, and I require it for the entire team.
And Phil, we could spend the rest of the hour just talking about this. I mean, it's an incredible setup. I think I have kind of maybe two follow-ups. One around being kind of a team of one, give some advice, so maybe to think about that, and then maybe about the personas. But let's start about the team of one, because there's a lot of people out there on a team of one that are hoping to someday kind of follow that path to success, to grow, to build. And maybe if you could think back to where you were around prioritization and like how did you start to build those early wins, or what were you thinking? Were you thinking you were going to be here someday with a full squad? Or was it kind of like a bit of a surprise along the way?
Yeah, and this wasn't even the role I joined Workday for. I joined it for
Yeah,
a wholly different role. I was doing leadership consulting before, so I joined to take on all of the leadership, succession planning, talent, and then I pivoted to this. So yeah, I wasn't,
incredible.
this is new. You know, as thinking about prioritization, I go back to earlier that there are some fundamental things that we had to fix. At that point, this is very common. Each HR COE has driven their own data set and their own dashboard and their own report, and it's separate across the board. I know that was a problem I needed to fix, but it's not an overnight problem. You need data governance, you need alignment, and so forth like that. But what I needed to do at the time was build some excitement and surprise about the insights you can get from people data. And this is where I went, employee listening was probably the first project and put me on the map, which is we had built an employee listening system. And by the way, Richard, we do this pretty cool thing. We've been pulsing every employee every week for the past almost 8 years.
Wow.
And that was my first project to do continuous employee listening. And we took that data and distributed it out to our senior leaders in every manager. And that really woke people up to the power of data. This was before we had an employee listening product, which is Peakon. We did this old school Workday survey, a dashboard, and some hack together analysis in R and Python to get this out. But it woke everybody up and surprised them. They're like, wow, this is really exciting and interesting. And that allowed me to get more resources to tackle the gnarlier, more kind of cross-functional problems I had to address.
That's awesome. Yeah, listening is one of those kind of early ones where you have a decent amount of control as a team because you're doing that direct data generation and collection. Super excited to hear about weekly. But maybe let's put a pin in the personas. Maybe I'll come back to that during Q&A.
Okay.
And if folk are on the call here too that have some questions, please put them in the Q&A. I'll collect those for the end. We'll actually go off the recording for the Q&A. So if you're listening to this later, make sure you show up next time because it's important to be in person and kind of get those kind of off the record a little bit more open. But I'll keep pushing through with some questions here because I know everyone's really excited to hear about the roles you've got on your team. So as you're thinking about your team today, maybe before we talk about a specific role, could you talk about how your team is set up in terms of structures or like pillars of the team or certain teams within your teams that are sub teams?
Yeah. So back to the philosophy about product-oriented people analytics. What that actually means is you need to rethink about the types of people in the setup that you have. And so we have two pillars in our organization. We have a what I would call a data science and research pillar. So those are the ones who connect whatever intervention or whatever data to some business outcome, whether it's quality of hire, whether it's improving your sales activity, whether it's creating product faster or so forth like that. And then I have a technology function whose role is to build and enable products. And, I think, we were talking about this, working on back and forth on questions. So like, what is the benefit about working at Workday? Well, I get my technology for free, more or less, right? So that's good. So
That
that's a
helps.
benefit. And I work in Workday products. So they build and manage, we do everything in Workday. Curate insights, we deliver personalized alerts. All of this is possible, and we have that team that does it. And that's our product team, and the product team deeply understands the business, the personas they're serving. They track the adoption of their products, and they look at whether or not it's having the intended value. And so that's the technology team and the research team. And the research team, Richard, as you know, they take insights like we knew when we were thinking about hybrid work, we did a whole set of experiments. And what we found is that when people did come to the office, they actually had stronger networks and more diverse networks. And so we weren't solving for productivity in our flex policy, we were solving for bridging connections. And so
Incredible.
that was a huge thing. And so we took those insights and enabled it in our technology for other people to see, right? So you take the research and you translate it into technology, and those are the two main pillars.
That's fantastic. And there's something really powerful about being the customer zero. I've always been fascinated with HR at HR tech companies, let alone people analytics at HR tech companies, because you see that team that can kind of like bend the tech just a little bit, or maybe get on front of the roadmap and kind of help kind of shape where that's going. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I love that space where your team and your community that you're servicing knows what you're doing so intimately and supports you in that deep way. But as we're thinking about the roles, I think the two that people I know were very excited about, you posted a senior director and then you posted a product manager too. And I think even just hearing you talk about your product organization, your product philosophy, that starts to stand out even a little bit more. So it'd be great to hear about those two roles, as well as if there's other roles that you have open or that are coming. I know people on the call here would love to hear about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first one I want to talk about is the product manager role in Dublin. So in people analytics, again, we talk about products. We have specific products like People Leader Hub, right? So that is all the information that a manager needs to run their team, the insights they have, and so forth like that. We have another product called the Hub Health dashboard. And that Hub Health is for every one of our 84 global site leaders to understand the health of their site, what's trending, any concerns, and so forth like that. And so our product manager here in Dublin, Ireland, that we're hiring will oversee a series of products that really focus on the global scale and really tackle some of the nuances that are unique to each country in those products. And we have a great a leader who grew up here at Workday. I think his entire career, Rex Blodgett, is hiring that. You can connect with him on LinkedIn. We're actively searching. So if you know somebody interested in yourself, head over there. The other one, Richard, since we have two pillars, right? Technology pillar,
Yeah.
data science pillar. This is the leader of our data science organization. The most important thing for them to do is they help, I would say, influence strategy at the highest level of both HR and people decisions across our company. Because every executive wants to see the data and the research behind a decision that they're making.
Sure.
And this person leads the team who often goes to our CEO, our executive team, even to the board, who shows insights that enable, different strategies like our hybrid strategy, our site health strategy, our job architecture, all of our transformation work we've done here is influenced by this team. And so this is someone, you know this well, Richard, in this space. You got to be able to influence your stakeholders like crazy, right?
Sure.
You got to be able to tell data stories like it's, like the back of your hand. And then you have to have great business acumen, which means you have to be a great business leader, and you have to know the HR domain, right? Knowing the domain makes a huge difference because then you know the levers to pull or the data connect in order to do that. So it's a big role, looking for a big leader, but we have an awesome team in place, a great team in place, and a great reputation here. But the leader is going to come in and just kind of lead this to the future.
Bill, I love that. When I saw the role, it's a very modern posting. And your team is modernized. And like thinking about how you're going about people analytics, I'm thinking even like 10 or 15 years ago, a phrase, I wrote this phrase down, you said earlier, connect interventions to business outcomes. That alone is so powerful to hear a senior leader in the company start to speak about it in that way, to measure the outcomes of HR, to measure the outcomes of the business. And to have a opportunity like this for a person to come in at that strategic level. And I would love to hear your thoughts on this. That HR domain side, I feel like 10 or 15 years ago, HR was hiring a lot of data scientists and saying, just do data science against what we're doing. We've definitely seen that switch into this very much so like domain expertise is really the key to unlock. So yeah, if you could just double down on that a little bit about how you see that around your team.
I think, yeah. I mean, if you look at the evolution, Richard, I think a lot of the, let's say, data engineers and data scientists from 15 years ago were making up for the lack of really great technology. And I think the technology has evolved quite a bit. We have a number of great products here. I see another, I know, Richard, you work at a great organization that has a great product that does this stuff. And so the technology has evolved quite a bit. And so the role of a people analytics team is not your data engineer and pipelines anymore, right? Per se. It's really like hypothesis testing, doing research, and then influencing strategic decision makers. And then embedding systems of accountability. So let's say, yeah, we are going to go to a flex work process. How do you correct or align the entire ecosystem to hold them accountable in a way that your employees trust you, in a way that gives insights to your leaders, right? Well, you do that by embedding those analytics into that technology, which is what we've done here at Workday. So everybody knows exactly where they align. And so we don't need, I would say, again, like the 15 years ago,
Yeah.
what we need is the strategic decision thinkers who have data science skills, right? And so that domain expertise knows which levers to pull, you know, how to connect the dots between different attributes you're working with. And then even more important, if you understand the business of the company you work in, you understand how important building pipeline is for an AE, or and how important the next release is for your product to go out, or even your partner strategy. That enables the people data work to be even more impactful.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah, I wrote down, I'm writing notes as quick as I can because I'm picking up as much as anyone else on the call. But the level of data scientists we had were making up for the lack of technology. That just rewrote something in my brain just hearing about that. So I appreciate you digging a little deeper there for me too. So as we're thinking about the people domain, as we're thinking about the people side of your team, for people on the call that might be interested or might know someone that's interested, what skills, experiences, traits, what makes someone thrive at Workday? As you're thinking about kind of someone you're bringing in, or maybe someone that is very successful on your team.
Great. Let's continue the conversation, right, from the previous conversation.
Yeah.
Three things, right? And I'm going to repeat myself a little bit here. Number one, business acumen. You need to understand how your business serves customers, like at least for us, how we build software, how we generate revenue. That context makes the insights relevant, right? Number two, HR domain fluency. You know, you could be the smartest data scientist analyst around, but if you don't know how org design, onboarding, manager capabilities, what their impact is, you're really going to be limited. And then the value focused thinking, right? This is the phrase I say often: curiosity is not an analytic strategy. And because there are a lot of businesses that business leaders and executives, or COE HR leaders, come to me and say, "Hey, I'm just curious about, you know, this and that and so forth like that." And I could tell you, you could run an entire business on curiosity with all these questions, but it's going to be very expensive and you're not going to make a lot lot all right?
Doesn't pay
Because
the rent.
people are very curious, right? And so we focus on, you know, high level, high leverage work, very strategic work. All of our work is usually connected within a major initiative that the company is doing or that HR is doing. So it's not a separate thing. It is supportive and accelerates a lot of our business strategies we're already doing. Of course, there is, Richard, a baseline of self-service. The nice thing is if you have great technology, you invested in data governance, you curate those products, a lot of the curiosity can be solved by people getting insights they need from the products that are already out there.
Oh, that's tremendous. That's tremendous. Yeah, it sounds like a fantastic team you're building. So as one of the things you mentioned was that sort of business partnership and alignment. We hear about that a lot around successful people analytics teams are not independent doing their own thing by themselves. They're very woven into the business. So could you talk a little bit about how your team partners across and how you've built a team that's geared that way and oriented that way?
Yeah, I think a lot of teams right now, in the way that the organizations and the way that the macro environment is facing us here, Richard, is that a lot of organizations are focused on transformation, focus on evolving their business models to adjust to the world that we're facing right now. You know, and each industry is hit differently, and that just doesn't involve only people data, right? A real transformation is you need people data, you need financial data, you need outcome, you know, data from your organization. And so the way we partner is almost all of our projects have some connection to finance and some connection to a business outcome. So whether that's a sales analytics leader who's driving some focus on AE pipeline development, or our head of FP&A, who I work very, very closely with in order to do strategic workforce planning from end to end. And I just give you one simple example of this. And I think a lot of people analytic leaders, at least the ones I've been talking to, are really investing in workforce planning. And that's because we need to have better alignment between HR and finance. One way you can do this, one way that we've done this, Richard, is looking at like a simple thing, management reporting hub, which we have. So every cost center manager can see headcount to plan and budget versus actuals at every forecast that we do, right? Not only does HR have access, finance has access, but the actual leader running that cost center, running that budget actually knows. And so in a way, we've configured the tech in the flow of the data so that HR and finance has to be aligned. And we've done that with workforce planning, and we've done that across a number of things when we're thinking about the transformation efforts. And that work takes, I would say, some technology work with finance, with HR to align that with the other businesses out there, the other business outcomes that you're trying to drive. So, but it wasn't magical, Richard. We had to work at this, year over year. There were some, definitely some failures and some misses, and you've got to continually to work on it. But I think the unlocking of the data is when really you can align HR and finance and the business outcomes together. That's where you've seen the real impact.
Yeah, Phil, I love that. And I love a couple of phrases you're saying around like visibility, access, unlock. In a lot of people analytics teams, especially early new hires to the space, they think about like the value of this is going to be predicting the future. We're going to predict everything. We're going to get into prescriptive analytics someday. We're going to go really far into deep data science. And consistently, I keep coming back to, like the biggest value you can get sometimes is just what is our headcount, and we're all aligned on that. And the power of that statement across lines, I think that's what builds a lot of trust. And it sounds like you guys have taken that to heart and really built out wonderfully around that.
Yeah, I think, in this field, this idea of predictive is a little bit of a trap for people. They put that word out there to sound fancy, to look very exciting. But really, if you can just give people, this may be, I don't know if this is embarrassing or exciting from you, the simplest, most exciting product that we have out of People Analytics that goes to everyone is we have a monthly digest, and it just summarizes your organizational health for that month. What's changed? Turnover's gone up. Hiring, the time to fill is decreased. 95% of your employees are aligned to flex policy. Here's your budget to your actuals. Like literally, it's just like this small, aligned, goes out to all of our leaders. And our HR partners don't have to translate. They don't have to deliver it in a QBR. Our leaders, all they do is say, oh, this is interesting trend. They forward it to their HR partner, and their next one-on-one, they discuss it. It's not fancy, predictive, whatever. It's just like smart synthesis of what's actually happening. And often when you do that and you go directly to the leader, that's what they need from you. So in a way, we call it productionalizing, hard to say, analytics, essentially creating a product out of analytics, and you're getting out of the way as a person and letting that product do all the summarization and insights that you need it to do.
It's incredible. And that change from 0 to 1 of not having data to now I have data and I'm standing on firm ground. I think sometimes we get asked about the ROI of People Analytics, the ROI of what we're doing in this space, but it's a hard one to prove or to write down, like what was that shift like? But to the companies that have it, when they can stand on firm ground and finance can talk to HR, can talk to IT, can talk to business about what's going on across the business, it radically changes how quickly you can move when it comes to your workforce.
Exactly. I think if we do the fundamentals right and sprinkle in a little surprise every now and then with the research, like that's what really moves the organization.
Well said. Well said. So let's talk a little bit about that productizing too, because I know we're getting some really good questions in there about that, and we'll go off the recording soon to kind of like really kind of head off into the wild of hot takes maybe. But productizing analytics, you've said that a couple times. Let's dig a little bit deeper, especially because your team's built around that. How do you approach that at Workday? And does that eventually like push into the business a little bit too? Would love to hear a little bit of that customer zero side.
Yeah. So we think about products as a product manager, like if you're building software does. You need to understand your persona. You need to understand what the decisions they're making and then get the right insights to them and then reach them where they're at. I think there are, I talked about that nice summary example that goes to all of our senior leaders to give an org health digest. Another example is a simple alert that goes out to all of our internal facing employees about how much time they're spending in the office. It's a simple report. Our flex expectations is 50% of the time in the office over a fiscal quarter, and they know every month where they stand. And so it's a simple thing, but it's driven massive behavior change. And that's a simple product. And if they want to click in and say, oh, how did I trend, the previous quarter, or what are some other insights about me? They can just click that link from their phone, get right into it, and see insights about themselves, right? Or you can think about our employee listening product, Pecan. Every executive, every manager, and every employee has access to this. As an employee, you can see exactly where you stand compared to your team and see all the comments and suggestions you've made in the interactions with management. As your manager, you can interact with your team directly, see all the information. And as executive, you get rolled up feedback. And this is cool. Okay, this is the sexy part, Richard. As executive or senior leader, you can use AI to summarize comments, right? And you can use AI to get suggestions. And so now, since we've been pulsing every week, been doing it for 8 years, you can see on a week-to-week basis the shift in temperature or sentiment of your employees when you're doing this and using AI. And that's what it means by product, because 10 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, there was a whole employee listening team doing this. And I can tell you, we have one person spending 50% of their time on our employee listening product, which touches 20,000 people, not an entire team. Weekly. So this is the power of the product management model and focusing on great products instead of focusing on, a whole team that's looking at every question. So we got to adjust this question. We got to test this question. And what about this sample and that sample? No. Technology is there. Use the technology and then use the great insights that are generated from there to influence executives to make different decisions or to make great decisions or, along the way. So that's like an idea, like the idea of the productization of analytics.
Oh, it's an incredible case study. And it's amazing how quickly it's changed too. I'm even thinking about, I won't name company for this one, but a company I worked for, I remember walking into a meeting room one time and there were 10 PhDs coding a survey by hand. And you had to at the time. And again, it's that sort of like the technology has risen to the point that we can start to elevate out of that. But how quickly that has shifted to now it's this sort of a full-blown weekly touching every employee. I think that's just incredible. I think too, the other thing that really comes to mind is like, I'm coming off a conference I was at last week. It was a little more academic, and thinking about academics that would just keel over if they had access to 8 years of weekly survey data. And it's one of the joys of being in this people analytics space is like the ability we have to work with data to make change, to drive business goals is just unheard of in a research setting. So I just getting very excited about that with you.
Yes. I think I had some of my folks attend this said conference that you did attend as well. And they came back and said, I really feel proud of our team because there's not a lot of innovation going on outside of industry, right? A lot of the innovation that's happening is internal because we have all the data that we need.
People are guessing in the comments which conference. None of that, everybody. Okay, we'll stay focused. But let's bring it on back in. So one of the things we've talked a lot about with teams is around this idea of like, and maybe there's another change that's happened over the past 10 years, is this increased focus on ethics and looking at how do we build a team in an ethical, correct way? How do we build in a way that we can speak to the kind of like data privacy and work with our employees around that? It's a conversation that's come up again and again throughout these conversations. Could you share a little about how you're thinking about that within your team and how, especially as you're building products, how you're doing that with that mindset?
Yeah. I mean, I think fundamentally it's about trust. Like, we never want to do anything that would break an employee's trust, right? And when we think about the products we build, and we have products which provide insights to every employee, and we have products which employees have to opt out of or opt into if they don't want those products, right? And we always focus on trust and accountability. And when you focus on trust, then I think the decisions in ethics around the stuff you're doing, it makes a lot of sense because you're like, would this harm trust or break trust with a contract an employee has with a company, with their manager, with their leadership? With that, We do have an official data governance work stream that's managed out of our team that handles all people data. And in that, we bring in a cross section across COEs, HR COEs in finance, and that's a decision-making body. So if there's something that's a little bit controversial, right, or something we have to make a decision about, we bring it to that body. Of course, we work with privacy and legal. We operate in 34, we have employees in 34 different countries. We're completely compliant with every single one of those. So it's a complex thing, but it all focuses for us at least back on trust.
I love hearing that. And again, I think that's the difference between a analytics leader and a people analytics leader is that level of sophistication when it comes to the kind of ethical mindset, the tools you build, the regulations you work with, and just understanding that domain to be able to, and it's not necessarily to slow things down, it's to move faster thoughtfully and to do so with those protections and with the employee top of mind.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you digging in there. So we're going to round out the recorded version of this with kind of a big question for you around advice. So you're someone who's built a team. You've gone from the team of one to a one of the most respected people analytics teams in this space. What advice would you give to someone who wants to lead people analytics at that enterprise level someday?
Yeah, I've thought a little bit about this. I think the most effective leaders that I know in other organizations at the enterprise level, they know the business really well. So I think you have to know how you make money. You got to know how the products you build. You have to understand the revenue streams. You have to understand the kind of fundamentals of that area. That's huge. Learn the business. I think right now leaders, the people analytics leaders, I would say of today and in the future, they really are going to be focused on scalable products. I think there is a lot of enterprises are consolidating their tech spend. AI has driven a lot of that. People analytics leaders are going to have to show adoption, and they're going to have to show impact. And so I really, really believe the product mindset or a technology-focused mindset for analytics leaders is going to be key. And then the last one, and this one may feel a little squishy to you, Richard, and the audience here. I believe that there is a certain flow of energy in organizations. And there are certain initiatives that kind of sprinkle up and get steam and people start to focus on them. Maybe it's outcome driven, business driven, maybe it's just a stream of conversations, but there is this energy. And I always advise my leaders on my organization is to understand where the energy is and tap into that energy. Don't try to fight that energy or refute that energy with data. I have data to refute this. Understand where that energy flow is and then go along with that. And you're going to be way more successful, way more impactful if you can kind of find that energy and go with the flow of that energy. So those are 3 things. And I'm sure there are a lot of people in the audience who are already there in people analytics leading teams or are going to get this job. And so you're going to have advice for us, next time you come on.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Phil. And so with that, we're going to close out this recorded portion of the call. Everyone stay on the line though, because we're going to go to Q&A. But Phil, thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you for being open and sharing with us. It was delightful to hear about your journey. And thank you to the Northwestern Workforce Science Project for putting on this call.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.